G'day, g'day. Welcome to wherever you are in this wonderful and vast and deep and wide multiverse of ours. This is Mastering Music, Mastering Life. Welcome once again to another show. Tony Jack the Bear Man's in the house and in full effect. And today I'm very, very happy to have a conversation with a bloke who I've known but don't really know. We've had dealings over the years in the past in a professional capacity. I've been up to his wonderful facility called The Grove up near Gosford in a beautiful part of New South Wales. This gentleman's also done every possible record company job you can. He's been one of the best A&R guys in the business. He consults record companies. He's done just about everything you could think of, and anything that he hasn't done isn't worth doing. If there's anything he doesn't know, it isn't worth knowing. He currently has the Grove Studios, as I mentioned, and the Grove Academy, Musical Recording Academy, Scott. What's the title?
The Grove Studios Academy.
The Grove Studios Academy. And so Scott is also, to add to that long list of great achievements that he's done so far in his relatively short life, he's also now boarded into the area of being an educator and has provided a magnificent facility up there. So we'll get to talk about that. So Scott Horscroft, welcome to Mastering Music, Mastering Life. So good to have your company, and thanks for making time today for little old me.
Not a problem, mate. It's a pleasure to be here. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Again, thanks for blowing my trumpet, but to blow yours, I'm always following you and your inspirational talks, and I know that you're coming up next month to talk to our students again, but it's always great to hear those positive words coming out of your great mouth.
Thanks, mate. Much appreciated. So Scott, so just for those who may be watching or listening who aren't fully aware of you and aren't industry people per se, you want to just give us a quick rundown as to how you kind of got started and how you've ended up in this entire mess that you're in right now.
Yeah, it's been an awesome journey. I'm so grateful for the journey I've been on. I guess for me, it started out like, for a lot of us, playing in bands when I was young, playing in punk bands. I learnt piano and guitar very young and threw that all away to become a drummer in a few punk bands growing up out west in Sydney. And that was awesome. I also had a really keen love for making art at the same time as making music. Those two things came together, and I studied at Sydney College of the Arts. I studied a Bachelor of Fine Arts, which, if I look at what I focused on through that degree, it was making noise and spatializing that noise. So I did sound installation art with video and multiple speakers, and just, that's where I kind of took what I had at that point was a little home MIDI studio, or, recording audio on your laptop had just come out. So, I took this MIDI studio where I was making sort of beats and stuff to, into a sort of more of an art space, and sort of started to develop my studio from that early age. And that, I guess that was my in. It was the idea of conceptual art, of making noise, of making space, and at the same time recording bands. So it was a sort of, even at that stage, it was a kind of wide cross section of stuff that I was into. But I guess, ideas and that idea of practice and having an idea and creating that and seeing it through was something that I still sort of go back to, what I learnt most from in those days.
So, okay. So there's a lot of kids out there who would be maybe they're doing something similar, sound installation art. They got their, now obviously in this day and age, kids are able to get in and have really good setups at a very modest amount of investment. So you were there, some kids are there. So what was the bridge? So how did it go from, being an enthusiast to actually being able to springboard into the corporate world of a record company, and develop a career as an A&R guy? What was the bridge, and how did that happen?
There was a big gap there. And I guess that was, I was making my own art, making my own music. Then I decided that, you know, this room wasn't big enough for all of this gear. And I went in on a recording studio with a great engineer called Chris Townend, and a studio called Big Jesus Burger in Surrey Hills. And this was an incredible studio. He had it running longer than when I came in, but we had it running together for a good, 8 to 10 years. I can't really remember now, but was the sounding board for me. This is when, I started working with Sleepy Jackson, with the presets, with Silverchair, with a lot of the artists that I still continue to work with today. Birds of Tokyo, a lot of great records were made in this sort of madhouse studio in the belly of Surrey Hills through the great days of Sydney, which have sort of passed us at the moment, but will definitely be back. But that was the point where I got to start to understand the idea of being a producer, of working with artists and understanding what their dream was and working to fulfill that with them. And taking that from an early idea to a finished product. And I guess that doing that with those types of artists and developing some artists myself through that time, that's when I started to have a rapport with the record companies, and therefore, was asked by Mark Poston and Craig Hawker from EMI to come on as vice president of A&R for EMI Records about 9 years ago.
That's a hell of a debut, though, buddy. I mean, most people sort of go in.
I didn't even have a job before that, mate. I had been an entrepreneur my whole life. And to walk into a corporate record company, mate, I was so nervous, and I was confident in my ability to know great music and make great albums, but to understand the ins and outs of the record company, that was just fresh for me. It was just fresh and exciting.
So who are the people that kind of took you under your wing? So it was Mark Poston. Was he probably the main guy that took you under his wing and guided you through the whole process? Yeah,
look, there was a lot of awesome people that helped and mentored me through that time. Glenn Dickey and Mark Holland were the A&R team, both incredible music people. And John O'Donnell had also been the MD prior to that time. And I had worked with him making records when he was the MD. Mark Poston, Adrian Fitzallen was the head of business affairs, who was just incredible. Matt Evans was the head of finance. So just a lot of awesome people surrounding me at that point. And, it was an interesting time.
They were very much the who's who and the movers and shakers of the day. And I mean, these guys are still around, contributing and, in various ways. I mean, it's some people, you're like one of those people that fall into this kind of charmed life. The last bloke I spoke to probably had the most charmed of charmed lives was Ron Nevison, the producer, who's the first album he ever engineered, Scott, was Quadrophenia by The Who, and then follows it up with doing House of the Holy, I think Led Zeppelin. I mean, shit, man, much more charmed can it be?
Well, look, they're the ones you talk about, mate. There was so many albums. I mean, when that time between, wanting to be a music producer and then getting that gig at EMI, that was, I was working 280 to 300 days, 12-hour to 18-hour days in the studio every day. It was a lot of work, and I was, so dedicated, and as I still am, just absolutely dedicated to doing a great job for the artist and, honing in my skills. I mean, that's the best thing about this gig, is that it's art. There's no right or wrong. There's no end game. It's just a big journey of making yourself better at what you do, and hopefully people realizing that. But for me, it's such an internal thing. It's like a journey of referencing this and trying to achieve that, and just bettering yourself in the job that's at hand. Whether it be A&R or mixing or music production, they're all just as exciting for me.
What in your opinion made back then, or even to this day? Because obviously the industry's evolved, and the way, I mean, people need to be entertained. That's the constant. But the way, technology and distribution and all this has changed. But in your opinion, when you were A&Ring flat out, what do you think were the qualities, if you could define them as being a great A&R guy? And in this day and age, do you think that A&R is still playing the same role as it did? Because as a youngster growing up in the 80s, I mean, A&R guys were lauded. It was the A&R guys that I remember back in the day were guys that they had a very broad grasp and taste in music. They would get into anything from gospel to heavy metal. They understood the workings of the studio. They were out 5-6 nights a week. Their fingers on the pulse. They just were all encompassing, and they also had this gut instinct to be able to look ahead. Back when artist development was a thing, and in this day and age, it doesn't seem to exist as much. So, what do you think it was like back then for you? Or what were the qualities, and where do you see A&R and the role it plays, and what are the qualities that still make a good A&R guy in the current climate?
I think everything that you talked about, when that with the heyday of A&R, still applies now. I think having that broad knowledge of music, having that broad knowledge of what's happening, who's making great records, where they're making them, what scenes are blowing up, who are buying tickets to shows, understanding what's going on in the market. It's a massive thing. And I think there's just so much going on now. I think there's so many people making records. I mean, back in that heyday, people would have to go to a big studio to make a great record. These days, everyone's got the ability to do it in their bedrooms, put it up on Instagram, or, promote themselves on Instagram and all socials, and then get it up on Spotify. So, you've really got to be on the money and catching things before they blow up as a great A&R guy. And I think, I think there's, especially in Australia, there's just been, so many awesome artists coming out of this country, and, in the last, forever. But, so the A&R guys have, really got to be on their toes, and you not only using data, but, using gut instinct, and, if not forming their own scenes, and, trying to, support these awesome artists that are out there. Because, I firmly believe that that's what it's all about. It's about representing the company, finding great artists who you feel will just, not falter in wanting to be successful, and supporting them along the way.
Who do you think was, if looking back on it now, and maybe it's an unfair question to ask, because I'm sure every situation is unique and different, but was there a particular signing that you did that you were particularly proud of, from the aspect of maybe not just from maybe also commercial success, but because maybe it was something perhaps that your superiors weren't sure about, but you kind of stuck to your guns with it and just said, you know what, I really believe in this and I want you to follow me, and you were vindicated, by signing that artist?
Well, I think when you saw, the great thing about EMI was that we were always charged with developing artists. John O'Donnell, great music guy. EMI, huge history in developing Australian acts. So I guess, for me, not that anyone ever...
You're not playing favourites, I understand that.
No, totally. Well, I mean, Alice in Wonderland, I think, is just an incredible story. One being a DJ who also, was a producer, and, but she hadn't released any of her own music at that point under the Alice in Wonderland banner. Cut to 7 years later, selling out, her own headline arena shows in the US, and, debuting incredible charts with her music that she sings on, produces, and completely represents. I think, you have to take your hat off to her. She is, she's just worked so hard and is incredible.
Are there any acts in Australia during your time, of course, that you wish you had have maybe signed if the opportunity came your way?
Oh, so many. There's so many. I mean, there's there's only a few major record companies, and there's all the A&R guys that are in those record companies, Paul Harris, Holland, everyone that's out there, they're all on it. They're all at the shows. It's really just like you can fight and fight and fight, and then towards the end of that battle, there just seems to be a home that suits that act, and sometimes that's not your home. It can be heartbreaking, but I think if you're in it, you come back and you sign another artist that you're just as excited about, and keep moving forward. But it's cutthroat, like I won't name them, but I have lost a few that I've just that was heartbreaking at the time. But then I've still see them go on and have great careers, which makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah. Do you find that there's I know within my community, which is very, very small, but I hate to use the word competition. I really do, because I think everyone is unique in what they do, and there's only one you in terms of what you do. You may do similar things and have similar skills, but you as the person that you are is being hired is the one and only. But I found within my the mastering community, it's really all right. Let's, for lack of a better term, competitive. But we share a lot of camaraderie as well. And so, did you find that A&R community there's a lot of camaraderie, or do you think that the competition was so fierce that there was a bit of playing your cards close to your vest, when you're out and about and whatnot?
Oh, there's a little bit of the playing the cards close, but everyone's good mates. There's no bad blood. Everyone's just doing their job, and it's a small community. So I think everyone's just excited that the fact that there's another great band that everyone's into and going to go forward and conquer.
Yeah, and it's funny, and no pun intended, but historically, I've noticed a lot of kind of musical chairs. People may be working in different companies, and next minute they're working in the same company somewhere else, and there seems to be this kind of rotation going on around, and inevitably you might become colleagues. So I guess it's important just to keep things sweet with everyone, because you never know when you're going to bump into them, or you never know when you might be colleagues. So the default setting, just be a fucking nice person, applies here.
No, absolutely. And for me, I've always made records for all the companies, all managers, and all different types of artists. So for me, it's not a competition. It's about finding someone that you really believe in and that you really want to work with in any capacity, and pushing to make that happen.
So so as a consultant now, so we'll get to the Grove in a minute, but before we get there, so in terms of your contribution in towards the Australian record industry, or international for that matter, as a consultant, who do you consult, and what are the kind of things that you consult on? So if they're going to call Scott Horscroft in, what Scott going to be putting on the table for record labels or artists right now?
So after, I guess, 8 years as GM of A&R for EMI, I've shifted roles to consult across the board for Universal. So basically looking to sign artists and work with artists to develop and have the ability to, find out where in Universal suits the artist and the manager. I've just signed Adrian Eagle to Ireland, which I'm really excited about. He's a fantastic artist, and working with Nate and Weeze from Caliber Management on that one. So, I mean, I guess what I'm doing is creatively consulting, still signing artists, still working on making records and doing production for some of the
come on, internet. We lost you, Scott. We just lost you.
Now,
I think you're back. Hang on. Come on, Scotty. Come on in. I've lost you. You're frozen on me. Must be the not sure from where you are, mate. Internet from where you are. Right. Oh, poo. Oh poo. Oh poo. Oh poo. Oh damn.
Got your back.
Yeah, got your back. That's all good, man. We're going to keep it like that. We're keeping it raw, keeping it real. It's all good. So, you're saying about Andrew. We lost you when you talk about you signing Andrew, someone to Ireland.
Adrian Eagle. Yep.
To Ireland.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. So I'll just start that. As a creative consultant or as an A&R consultant for you at Universal, I'm still looking to sign and develop, produce, work with artists on developing their career. Signed Adrian Eagle to Island Records, and working with Wheeze and Nate from Caliber Management on that. So I'm working on production and consulting with artists that are on the label already, but mainly looking to sign and develop new acts across the Universal label.
So you spent so many hours, working in studios, and in the corporate world, as we know, it's not even a career as much as you're married to it, and it just takes up so much of your time and effort and resources. And burnout is such a big factor in that world. So did you find that you came to a point where you just kind of had enough of the? Did you reach a threshold, or was it something? Did you see the Grove as a way out, or was the Grove something that was working concurrently? As you were working, in your corporate life, and transitioned into what? How did all that sort of come about, and what was a tipping point for you, if in fact there was a tipping point?
Yeah. I think there's been lots of tipping points for me over my career, but I never saw myself being split between a music producer and an A&R guy. I saw them together, and I got the job at EMI when I had Big Jesus Burger, and didn't see that shifting from that point. I thought that I'd always maintain being a music producer and A&R guy and the same thing. That's how I see myself. So, there were never two paths being balanced. And I think the tipping points for me have always just been, being so focused on getting things right and balancing these things. I've always prided myself on having a great recording studio at the same time as making great records and working with artists to develop their career in a A&R capacity. I guess what happened with me is that I think the A&R side was starting to take up more and more and more time, which I was excited about. But after that amount of time, I did have some opportunities to get back in the studio and do some big focused tracks. And I just fell back in love with being in the studio and just started to miss it more and more as I was, doing the commute down to Sydney from the Grove. At the same time, I had the Grove. I've had it for 6 years now, and that's just been developing, and the school was developing. So it kind of got to a point where I guess I, had to make a decision to let one of these beasts flourish more than they were.
So if I'm not mistaken, so you bought the Grove 6 years ago. Did you buy it from Gary Beers, or did someone else buy it from him and then you bought it in turn from someone else?
That's correct. So in between Gary owning it and me owning it, Darlene Check owned it. A lady who has some associations with Hillsong had owned it, and we bought it from them. So I think it had kind of gone like 10 years, and then now 6 years.
And you got and there's a residence on the studio where artists can come and they can stay, and it becomes a package kind of thing where they can be creative, and because it's beautiful out there, man. You got nature, you got wildlife abounding. It's gorgeous out there.
Oh, it's insane. So it's it's built by Gary Beers from In Excess. So it's basically a 27-acre property. It's got 5 studios on it. It's got a big residential house, and then it's got the 4-bedroom house attached to the main recording studio at Studio One. So we run a school out of Studio 2. Studio 1 is flat out with bands coming to, you get the opportunity to really make that whole end of the property your own. Beautiful big SSL, and it's a live-in residential studio that is working really well. And Studio 2 has the Grove Studios Academy, and myself and Jack have our own little sort of getaway studios.
I think that the only other studio that I could think of that there was a similar kind of setup in terms of on a remote location in nature, just absolutely tip top in every respect, absolutely world class, was probably the Music Farm at Mullumbimby, if I remember years ago. There's a place called the Music Farm from years ago as a youngster, I remember. But it's great that we have such facilities, man, because in this day and age, as you know, running a big commercial facility isn't easy. There's a lot of overhead. And, now with so many people downsizing and also being able to be more portable as well with their setups, as well as affordability, accessibility, availability of software and all that kind of stuff. It makes guys like you and I and similar people like us in bricks and mortar kind of situations all the more challenging to keep the doors open and to provide value for people, because there's just so many options out there right now, and they don't have to go to a big studio. But thankfully, we're still hanging in there, buddy.
No, totally. And, I think it's that extra 20-40% that facilities like the Grove have. It's purpose built, so it makes that life a little bit easier when you're making records. It keeps you focused. It's super fun, and I think they're the things that keep people coming back to the Grove up here. And I think the other thing is having a studio. It's all about having great producers surrounding the studio. So, tailoring the studio to suit those great producers' needs, and designing it around those guys. So, we have Burke Reed, Jackson Barclay, Andy Mack, Jack, myself, and a lot of up and coming young guys that we've helped and continue to mentor coming through. So, for me, when, helping young engineers and young producers, work the studio to suit their needs, I think that's when you start to see, a culture being built around a studio.
I think that's so important. It's incumbent upon us as studio owners to build the culture in our place, whether we have a lot of staff or not. But for me, I always thought, what's the place I want to walk into, and who do I want to be greeted by when I come in? And so that to attract good talent, but also to I think people just get more productive. I think when you provide a good environment, a good culture of people, and as a leader, you walk your talk, and you just deal with them as equals, and you communicate effectively with them and support them. Because I think that I'm 56. I like to think that I'm going to keep mastering records. Yes, I love the mentor and the speaking, and there's a kind of transition, not in terms of replacing what I do, but just something working concurrently alongside what I do. But at some point, I think it's incumbent upon us to pass the torch, to pass the knowledge, not to believe in this whole idea that there are some kind of secrets or voodoo or shit like that going on, and to feed these kids, encourage them, because there's and I'm sure you'd agree with me here, Scott, that there's something so rewarding. Look at Jack Negro, for example. Your young guy who is absolutely kicking goals right now. And I think he's been with you 4 years or so, whatever he's been with you. And you took this kid from nothing, just a young, hopeful kid, and you've created a fucking monster out of him. I mean, how rewarding is that to see that unfold?
Look, Jack is incredible. You said it's so important to have someone greet you when you walk through the door. Well, Jack is the studio manager of the Grove. He's also, manages the Grove Studios Academy. He teaches at the Grove Academy. He's a great engineer, great producer. So he's, again, multifaceted, mentoring the guys underneath him already. And, at the same time, doing great engineering and mixing work while running the place. So no, he's the place would be completely different without him. He's his blood's in this place.
It's in a weird kind of way. It's almost like you're A&Ring talent, but not as a recording artist, but as an actual, producer for the future. So it's almost like A&Ring in that respect too.
Well, we have an intern program along with the academy at the Grove. So people can apply and come and, just get a feel for what it's like to be around the studio. And I guess what we see happen is, people some of them just won't leave. They're so enthusiastic. They come back. They want to do a second internship. They will come. They want to help set up a mix. They want to sit in on a mix. They just want to learn. And they're the people that go forward. It's about learning your skills, but it's about, wanting to achieve your goals. And those people are unstoppable. And they're in there and they're out there. And we just love giving them a space to do that, whereby, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of great people. There's a lot of hours. There's a lot to take in. So come and join us for the ride,
So what are the things that stand out for you? So, a young kid comes in, he does the internship. He's obviously very keen and very passionate and is invested in wanting to be the best he can be, or she for that matter. But what is the X factor, or what are the qualities, or is there anything in particular that stands out for you that makes you go, I can see big things for you, or you particularly, there's a particular thing there that makes you want to go, I really want to kind of invest a little more. I'm prepared to put a little more time and effort into nurturing you. Is there anything that stands out for you that you see or feel from someone when they come through?
Look, the first thing you can see is passion and their excitement and work ethic to be there and be in the studio, and basically, that no challenge or no job is too big for them. The Grove's a big property, and because it is residential, there's a lot of shit to do. Like swapping beds, cleaning up. We're in the bushes, shit floating around everywhere. So, it's not only just sitting in and doing awesome work on the concept. There's a lot of other stuff. So when I see guys come in who don't mind doing all of that other shit stuff, and then get to the good stuff, and are just as good at doing the good stuff as the bad stuff, and understand that, life just isn't about the thing that you think it's about. It's about all of this other surrounding work, and jobs that you need to do to get to that main goal. They're the interns that move on, and they become permanents here. So we have a round robin of 3 assistant engineers at any time. And, what I find is that after a certain amount of time, they become freelance, and then we're hiring them as an engineer and we get a new one in. We just had a great guy, Matt Stewart, who was an assistant here for some time, and he's now gone on to be freelance, and it's awesome. You're still seeing him around bringing work in, and we get him work, but he's working in all studios, which is awesome. That's why I do it. I mean, I've seen, some awesome guys come in as assistants and leave as brilliant producers. I mean, one of them's JP Fung, who I know that you've interviewed. He was, he was just so great in such a short amount of time. And, we went to Sweden together to work on Birds of Tokyo. We actually worked at the Grove before I was the owner here on Little Red. We did a lot of great records together.
One thing that really struck me about JP, and I'm sure would have struck you, obviously, was he has an old head on young shoulders. And I was so impressed with, yes, he's got great ears and talent and creativity, but he has this emotional maturity about him, and he connects with people. When I spoke to him, it was like, I just want to work with you, dude. I don't care what you make. I just want to be around you. Your energy is infectious. You're a cool motherfucker. And yeah, I don't care if you only do hip hop. I'll write hip hop records just so that you can use me.
Great. No, exactly. And I think back to the question before, when that they're great. You spend a lot of time in the studio when you're making records, and you spend a lot of time with the people you're making records, especially your engineer or your assistant. Other bands come and go, artists come and go, but you know, your band stays together. So that was what was awesome about JP and Jack and Jackson Barclay and Matt Stewart and all of the great assistants that worked at the Grove, is that they're just awesome to be around, and knew how to, you know, to have that rapport with artists.
And that's something you can't really teach someone per se. I think you can develop that in people. I think people have the capacity to develop that, but they're still going to have that innate quality that just tells you that they quote unquote, you know, get it. So tell me about the Grove. Tell me about what goes on out there at the Grove. What sort of things that you offer people that want to go out there, and what is it that I mean, there's a lot of options out there today, as you know, Scott. I mean, you obviously looked into the market and would have done all your due diligence. So what is it that you found that makes that you cater for in a different way, or makes you guys stand out, or, you know, someone was considering wanting to do, you know, an audio production course and invest in one. What is it that would make them, you know, tip the scales in your favor, you know, and what's it that you offer out there that sort of stands out?
Oh, okay. So we basically offer a diploma in music industry with, you know, sound production focus, and an advanced diploma of music industry, similar to, I guess, what TAFE does. Anyone that offers an approved accredited diploma, we offer that. But we've handpicked the units to basically focus on sound production, bit of live sound, film music, business attributes to that. So with a focus that it gives you a broad understanding of what's out there in the music industry, but with a real focus on getting your skills up as an engineer, or, you know, whether that be live, in whatever capacity, but just giving you a really strong fundamental basic understanding and skill set to go out there from there and pick where you want to go, what you want to do. I mean, there is a strong focus on entrepreneurialism in the course. You know, we all come from entrepreneurialism up here, you know, and I think that's the unique factor, that the Grove Studios Academy is on site with a super busy recording studio with people running around everywhere, the interns, the producers. You know, most of the bands and the producers are all staying on site. So these guys are coming into their world, you know, and seeing it happen. There's only 20 students in each class, and everyone has their own Mac workstation. That those workstations are situated in a proper control room. So it's got a Harrison 40 series console in it with all the bells and whistles and outboard gear. 2 booths off that. So, you know, it's a great environment that feels like you're in a control room. And
I think, and sorry to cut in there, but I think one thing that really I fucking love about this place, your place, and that is, unlike a lot of studios that have a lot of internal studios and they probably are nicely equipped and whatnot, yours is an actual fucking running commercial facility. It's a different feel to being in a place that is where, you know, where money going in the till is actually from paying clients, as opposed to, you know, no matter how much you try and pretend, no matter how much you try and create even no matter how convincing you try to make it, there's nothing like being in the energy of being in a session with actual people, or an environment that is, this is the real deal. This is not just a simulation, as good as it may be. And so when people go out in the real world, they can feel it out there. They know when they're in it, and they adapt, and they know how to behave and how to be in that environment. So that's a big plus, I think, in your favor, mate, having something like that.
No, I totally agree. I mean, there's a little bit of, you know, an industrial feeling to a working studio, isn't there? It's not all cushions and carry on. It's like, you know, that shit's over there because it gets used every day, kind of, you know. And I guess that's what it's like up here. It can be chaotic, and there's kind of, you know, a little bit, there's an active order to it all, but it is busy. Look, I guess for me, I think the focus that we have really active lecturers who are out there doing work. They're not just full-time teachers. They're Jack himself takes a lot of the sound production parts of the course. We have Mark Tinson, who's the duty of care that he has for the students and for making sure that all the assessments are understood and so on. I can't, it blows my mind. So that side of it I'm really proud of. And we've also worked with the New South Wales government with Smart and Skilled funding as well, which has taken us a long time to get. But that's been a big thing for me because we're on the Central Coast. I don't think everyone has the ability to just pay upfront course fees.
Mm-hmm.
So we were having a lot of inquiries, and we didn't have vet fee funding or anything like that because we're a new RTO, a new registered training organisation. It takes time to get that stuff. So we finally have the ability to work with New South Wales funding, which is just awesome, just to give people the opportunity to come who can't pay that upfront, which I'm really big on.
Yeah. Does do you guys have, or is there any plans maybe to provide some kind of scholarships or anything like that in the future?
We already do. Yeah, we already do. So we work with, basically we go out to all of the schools on the Central Coast to year 11 and 12, and we get music classes to come up for excursion days and come and, we record their bands, and they get to, look at the studio and get a feel for you remember that first time you walked into a recording studio. We're just trying to give people that opportunity and build their excitement. So yes, we do. We work with a number of schools to give half scholarships and full scholarships, but that there's
it never quite leaves you that feeling of like the first time you go into a big studio, or you hear reverb for the first time, or you accomplish your first recording or first edit, or anything like that. And look, I still get a buzz out of it, Scott. All these years later, and I still get a buzz out of it, and it's great to see other kids get that buzz. You kind of almost live vicariously through their joy, and what they're doing.
Yeah. My great one was when at Sydney College of the Arts at Rozelle there, Balmain. I remember going into they had a big Pro Tools rig there, which I think was 888s. And I wanted to stretch this piece of this voice, and it was 5 seconds, and I really wanted to make it 20 seconds. So I got into the studio and I stretched the audio, and then left for the day and came back, 24 hours later when it was going to finish processing. But it did. It took 24 hours to stretch a vocal from 5 seconds to 20 seconds. And that's awesome.
Isn't it hilarious? Isn't it hilarious when you think about it? Because we were, you remember obviously the time when digital technology first came on board. And, I remember my first external hard drive, I think in 1995, was a 1 gig SCSI drive. It cost $2,500 back then. And I remember the first thing I said is, I'll never fill this thing up. This will never get filled. That was 1 gig.
Amazing, right?
It's not, and where's it going to be in 10 years, brother? Like what I can't, my mind boggles. I can't imagine what it's going to be like 10 years from now. How much faster, how much cheaper, how much, is it going to be like, are we going to be connected somehow through wires, through our brains into each other? Will thoughts just become, data or what? I don't know, but
I don't know. Well, there's some head tracking software out there now where, you can pan stuff using your head, and it's just hilarious. So yes, I'm not sure where we're going to be. I definitely, in terms of the quality and for price, it's so much. I mean, I spent $150,000 on a Pro Tools rig. Back in the day, you remember?
Yes.
And now, the new gear, which is just as many ins and outs and sounds so much better, and it's less than a quarter of the price. So that's awesome in terms of accessibility for everyone, and that's really great. But
we're in the
so I think the biggest thing for me still is ergonomics in the studio. Like I still walk out of a 5-day session, to the osteopath going, and he's like, what happened? It's just like, the mouse, the seat, the environment, it's just, it's still hard work on your body being a music producer, working, the long hours that it takes.
Yeah, man. And the amount of focus and concentration. I mean, especially when it comes to trying to capture correct me if I'm wrong here, but I would imagine as a producer, probably one of the hardest tasks would be capturing a good vocal performance, and the time it would take sometimes. I guess it would depend on singers, but I would imagine just to be present to really capture someone's performance would be where you got to be so laser focused, man, and so present to do that.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I always try and in a session, try and get the vocalist to start singing as soon as possible, even to lay one down to get them comfortable, because, that's for me, I think the big thing. And I can do it in different ways. Sometimes it's like, okay, man, why don't you set up tonight and just have I'll set up a little laptop and you just have your headphones on and do it as you would do it in your bedroom, and get all of the little bits right, all the nuances that you want to be happy with, get all that done right. And so in a way, then you've got this bed track of them, getting it down exactly how they want. And then the next day looking at where we could better it by, performing it into, maybe a big U47 with, the whole studio focused on them. There's so many different ways to get that vocal, but you're right that it's the most important thing. For me, it tells the story, gives the emotion, and it's something that you've got to figure out the best way to get it out of the artist, and that might not be the way that you want, but you've got to figure it out.
Yeah, and this is where the importance of just being, so good, just someone who's good at reading people and just understanding psychology of people, and just know when to push and when to back off, and just to kind of just be able to have a good feel for who you're with in the room and the vibe, and just kind of be a step ahead of any given situation.
Totally. And all the gear in the world can't make that. It's sometimes it's process based. It's how you're doing it and when you're doing it, and so I think for me it's always been important to understand that there are different ways to get vocals. Some people sing really quiet and want to be removed from, standing in front of a big mic and belting it out, and it's about finding a way to get good results while giving the artist that ability to do what they love doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I was just on a bit of a tangent. I just wanted to touch on this because I know you're a little pressed for time. But I saw a great article the other day online, and I think it was Industry Observer, were the people that put it out, and it was a story that was doing varying focuses on young men in the entertainment industry who were fathers, young fathers, and how they managed to be able to be, because they're saying now dads on average are spending three times as much time now than what they did, say, my generation of dads when I was as a young dad, which I thought was fantastic, because I've often said that I failed my first two kids miserably as far as being present in their lives. A great provider, trying to make up now with the third one. But you, the one thing I noticed about you, and I told you the other day when we spoke about it, and I wasn't pissing in your pocket because I need a new best friend, but it's so good to see young men who are in the industry, which is it can take up so much of your time. It's demanding of your time, and because it's such an enjoyable, it's not just a 9-to-5 job. It is a lifestyle, but it's so enjoyable. So it's easy to get seduced by it, if you will, and that obviously has a cost in terms of you being away from your kids, or being away not because you want to, but it just kind of happens that way. And you've and again, because I see you online, man, just with your kids, you're doing your thing, you're juggling so much stuff as it is, and yet you still manage to make it happen. So how do you manage yourself in relation to that? and any advice you want to give to anyone who, young people with kids who feel like, oh shit, I better leave the kid at home, or can't do this or can't do that. How can you create some, not sense of balance, but at least minimize impact, in that respect?
Man, it's tough. I ebb and flow. Like one week I could be feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not spending enough time with the kids, and the following week I'll be going, oh my gosh, I'm not spending enough time working because so it's so tricky to find that balance. I guess, I've run off a calendar and I really look at it in time over, ahead, and block out time, knowing that, okay, I'm going to be busy making a record this week, these 2 weeks, then try and block out that time for the family. I guess, the big thing for me is the mornings, making sure that every morning I'm present, and then, try and make it home for dinner. But, I think that big thing is, okay, blocking out different time to work and then to be present at home is the most important thing. But you're so right in the fact that it isn't just 9 to 5. For me, being in that corporate world where it was, in a way, office time was 9 to 5, 9 to 6, and then the commute. I've shifted to a place that is suits my lifestyle a lot better in terms of managing my own time and being able to dedicate time to the family. So we're kind of in a different space where we're feeling great about that time. But again, now that it's getting busier and busier, being back, making records and mixing and so on, it's about planning and going, you know what, when it's in the calendar, family time, you can't move it. Just leave it in there, because you'll feel great about it when, in the end of the month, when you're not going through those whirlwinds of feeling like you're not focused on all the different facets. Yeah. And man, it's so bloody enjoyable. Like being my partner Annie and Hudson and Connie are just awesome. So it's a highlight for sure.
And I think it's also about, for me, because I only get to see my son once a week on a Saturday for a few hours, making a concerted effort, even if he was with me all the time. I think the time you'd want to spend is quality time, rather than spending a whole weekend. And if you're just going to be sitting around and fart-arsing around, but have 2 hours, 3 hours, but that 2 or 3 hours is nothing matters than the time you spend with your kids and the input you have, and that's it. And everyone else just has to wait. And if they can't wait, well, that's just... There's no negotiating as far as I'm concerned. There's a boundary, and it's not just a boundary, it's a fucking moat. And there's an electric fence and sharks, and alligators and eels. Yeah. You know what I mean, Scott? And,
totally. And I think, sorry.
No, and I think people have to respect that. And to quote the great 20th century philosopher, Dr. Seuss, those that matter won't mind, and those that mind don't matter.
Yes. And man, it's only yourself, your own self-anxieties that are coming into play there. I think, great businessmen, great executives, women, mothers, who are very successful, everyone, when you see the great people in business who do manage their time well, they, you can't contact them because they are dealing with something with focus. And, you realize that often it's, it takes that switch off to do something really well, and, to not be present for everyone at all times. Yeah. You got to be a little bit selfish.
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with being that. So, mate, I'm aware that time is running out, and not that I'm enjoying this conversation. We could be talking here for at least another hour, but I know you, speaking of family, you got a family thing to take care of, and I respect that. Yeah, so probably a good segue for us to wind up. But mate, I want to thank you very much for availing yourself today, and just giving us some great insights and good some good input. And if we could just close off by maybe to any young kid who may be watching, who has aspirations, they feel, they've got their nose pressed up against the glass looking in. They want a part of it. They feel they've got something to offer. What are the 1 or 2 things that kids could start doing or applying today after they watch this or listen to this, that they can apply in order to take those first steps towards trying to make a career for themselves in music?
Look, I think my big one's it's an oldie, but it's a goodie, and that's surround yourself with great people that inspire you. You know, don't get bogged down. Go out and meet new people, whether it be at shows, doing internships, do some study, whatever it is. But just keep meeting new people. Travel. You know, it's about being enthusiastic within a culture. That's my big one. Spend quality time. Doing your art by yourself, you know, like whatever your art is, whether it be mastering, mixing, producing, making music, whatever it is, build a practice that is like a painter, you know, where you're by yourself and you're doing it every day and you're getting better and better at what you do. I think one more is, you know, take risks. That thing where you think, gosh, I shouldn't, you know, I can't cold call that person. Well, yes, you can, you know, and it's like, you know, every A&R guy is out there looking for an awesome artist. And if you're an artist, you know, you're sitting there, gosh, it's like, be great at what you do and you'll get there. Keep working and referencing and finding new ways and copying and stealing and borrowing and doing whatever you can to get it done.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's a lot of hard work, but you know, all of those things can help you on the way.
Beautiful. Scott, thank you so much for your time. I'm so looking forward to seeing you in the flesh next month and getting to hang out with your kids and doing a talk with the MMAD crew, who I absolutely love and love what they do. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you, mate. All the best. Continued success to you on the Grove, my friend. And we will talk to you very soon.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it so much. And look forward to seeing you again.
Absolute pleasure. There you go. So there's Scotty Horscroft from the Grove. Record company man extraordinaire and decent bloke to boot as well, which doesn't hurt in this day and age. So.